One of the most complex issues we've had to deal with in this report is in relation to rules of origin. What are the challenges there?
Well, countries that are not part of the EU customs union will need to comply with the rules of origin, and that means demonstrate, evidence the origin of the components and the parts of the products that they export to the EU. And the reason for that is that the EU will want to make sure that goods coming in through the UK from other states are not coming in effectively through a back door and paying a lesser tariff than they would have done if they'd come directly into the EU.
Can you give me some examples?
So the examples of the challenges that may be faced include, at the moment, if there could be a manufacturing unit in the UK that exports directly to South Korea and currently has the benefit of the EU-South Korea FTA. To take that benefit, you need to be exporting directly from an EU state. So when the UK is no longer part of the EU, that direct export will no longer get the benefit of the lower tariff rates in the EU-South Korea FTA. Another example would be some of the complicated supply chains that we know exist in many manufacturing industries, including cars, which lots of people have talked about, where parts cross borders many times in the process of manufacture. Now, if the threshold to meet an EU content rules of origin for the purposes of the EU-South Korea FTA, say that the threshold is 55%, and say that at present 20% of that is made up from UK origin parts. After Brexit, that 20% will no longer count towards EU content on the face of it. It will no longer count towards that EU content, and therefore it might be that that EU manufacturer, having previously complied with the rules of origin for the purposes of the FTA, now drops below the threshold they need in order to continue to get the benefit of those low rates. And obviously that means they may look to different supply chains, they may look for a different solution in order to continue to get those preferential tariffs.
And how does the UK government get around those issues?
The solution to this would be for the government to negotiate cumulative rules of origin in the FTAs that they produce, so that the EU content and the UK content can still both count towards achieving those preferential rates, which would protect the integrated supply chains that exist between the UK and the EU.